Hey guys, welcome to Off the Record.
I already hate that intro.
You already do?
Your face, just the face you're making. It's like,
what about my
you're
hair?
Trying to be hardcore.
Like
your hair looks awesome.
Up.
Your hair
I feel
looks
like
great.
Conan O'Brien.
It's very Conan. You got a Conan thing happening. I got a little bit of a wave going, but it's not nearly at the level. This is the fun. This is the funner version of our. Well, our other podcast is fun too.
It's pretty fun. But I mean, that first episode that we did was really fun, and you can't ruin my day because I'm super happy. Do you want to know why, everybody?
Tell us.
There is one of my top favorite celebrities. I'm not going to say what kind of celebrity has made multiple appearances
in motion pictures of porn
at my practice in Woodstock, New York. So this person came in, and I believe that they are a master of their craft. I've been a fan for decades of this person.
So older,
right?
Okay.
Exactly. So it's filling in the
Doing
gaps.
some math.
And so this person came in, and I was floored. I could not believe it was that person, and you could see that person in real life. We have this great moment, because I was trying to, you're just a regular dude,
Play
right?
cool.
I just gave away the gender. I'm sorry about that. You're just a regular person, and
could be a chick.
She could be a chick. We're just or a dude, whatever
whatever you're into,
whatever way you want to swing it there.
Mm-hmm.
It could be either, but I just had my moment, and I was able to, kind of say thank you for the great memories and enjoying their work for their time that I've enjoyed it. And I couldn't believe it. I swear to my staff was like, I've never seen you this happy. And your kids have come in and and visited you when they, surprised you. And I'm like, yeah, I know. But it was,
this was bigger than your kids dropping by with a painting.
Yeah, I know. With artwork to hang up. It was fantastic. And then the second time they come in, I'm like, no, this can't be real. If we become friends, what happens if we become friends?
I feel like you're taking that very far. So what we have is 2 drop-ins from a celebrity. You're used to celebrity sightings because you're in the, you're in Woodstock. You're in the biggest, smallest
why
city.
is this one so much?
This one's sticking with you.
Right.
Because you've already got this fantasy where you're best friends.
No.
And so I'm concerned about your fantasy life.
I've actually started to drive by his house at night.
Oh, boy. That's how the arrest happens.
Yeah.
And that's how the Woodstock police get involved.
I think I get one get out of jail free card for all the COVID vaccines.
It feels fair.
So, I mean, I'm happy, but you were just on a tear a second ago.
Miserable, Neal.
We just recorded calories.
We did.
And then you just go on this tear.
Just an absolute tirade.
Tell me about it.
I'm glad you're happy and your fancy pants new friend that you made from Hollywood. Fine.
Yeah.
That's great. I'm excited for you.
You should
I'm
be.
miserable, Neal, and I'll tell you why. I ate carbs this weekend. And
you mean like everybody?
Yeah, like all people.
Yeah.
But I was railing about cheat days and stuff before because I hate them. And I sometimes I'll experiment with this idea that I can eat like regular people. So we made the mistake. That wasn't a mistake. I'm not going to say it was a mistake.
Right.
We went to Cheesecake Factory over the weekend. And I've never eaten a cheesecake slice from the Cheesecake Factory before. Now, if you followed along here, I've had gastric bypass surgery. I've talked to you about my dumping syndrome, the whole thing. If you're following along, you know what those things are.
Yeah.
So for me to take up residence in a Cheesecake Factory is
sit in the booth.
It's a very dangerous game I'm playing.
Read the 15-page menu.
There's so many menu items, and so I actually had eggs and bacon. They
I was
served
going
me
to
breakfast.
ask.
So I actually, for my food items, I had eggs and bacon. It was delicious. It was actually quite tasty.
Because even though the meals, the salads are 1,800 calories.
Yeah, 1 million calories on the salads. But I saw that you could do breakfast all day, and or you could do eggs all day, and I was like, well, that's I
easy.
love eggs, so the eggs is perfect for me. It was eggs and bacon, fine, totally right up my alley. Right in my wheelhouse in terms of my nutrition that I had planned for the day. And then we got this super duper Snickerlicious doodle doobadoo thing at the table. And they brought over the Snickers one because I ordered it. They didn't bring it by accident. I looked at the menu and went, give me the Snickers thing.
Now did you share this?
So we got two.
Okay.
And so my wife got a lemon meringue one, which was insane. So I had a bite of that. That was stupid good.
Yeah.
But this Snickers one, I can't even get past it because my life has physically been changed. I'm sweating talking about it right now, just thinking about it. But the main takeaway was it was delicious. I loved it. I was glad I had it. We had a nice time.
Yeah.
But ever since, I have been miserable. Why? Sugar does to my body is it makes me feel depressed and sad. And it's a straight line for me because I eat it so rarely that when I have a mental health issue like this, it's connected. I can draw a straight line. Like it's a day later and I'm like, I hate everyone.
I don't want to go to work anymore.
I don't want to go to work.
Yeah.
I don't want to see people. I don't want to see Neal and his stupid face at the stupid podcast. I don't want to do it. Dana's nice. I'll like to see her, but Neal, forget it. Screw Neal. And that's where I'm at in the morning. Like I wake up in the morning ready to murder people and myself.
Just because you had a Snicker on a piece of cheesecake.
Now it was a Snicker cheesecake. So the whole thing was like 8 billion.
It had to be like 1,800 calories.
It's the sugar.
Yeah. It's like 60 grams of sugar.
It's just all sugar, but it was so good. It was so good. And that's the problem. And so I get it, guys.
Hits all those dopamine receptors.
I get it. It's got
at the same time.
All of it just hitting at the same time. Mm-hmm. So yeah. So we want to help you with this, and we want to be helpful, but we're people, and we find ourselves making Cheesecake Factory mistakes here too.
I think all of those things are really valid points. I kind of wish we talked about this on the Calorie podcast.
Well, this is the after.
This is the after party.
This is the after
party.
party.
You're getting the extra stuff here.
After the party is the after party. After the party is a hotel lobby.
You're getting Mark's dumping syndrome of his depression.
Just my downward spiral.
Yeah.
This is what you're into, folks. If you came here for it, it's what we're doing.
To be honest with you, I'm proud that you ate junk food. You know,
it's a big deal for me. And all jokes aside, every once in a while I will allow myself to have some sugar because I'll have like a little bit of ice cream or I'll have a little bit of sugar stuff. Mostly because I want to see how my body reacts to it. So part of it's like a science experiment. Part of it is I want to try different things. I don't like being locked into my nutrition the way that I am. I'm very regimented in my day. And so when I get the chance, it's a lot of work. It's a lot of mental energy to stay on top of things the way that I do.
You want to okay, I want to take one break.
I can get a break, and so it's not like I'm rewarding myself that way because I've changed my relationship with food. It's a different place and it's hard to describe. It's like, I can do this.
Yeah.
And I know that it's not going to lead to me leaving there with 50, like there was a dude walking around with a cheesecake in each hand and he worked there. So that was his job, was to move cheesecakes around, I would imagine. But every time I saw him, I'm like, that would be me, right? Like in my own thinking, in my old thinking, I wouldn't have been satisfied with just one cheesecake. I would have brought the whole building home with me and then eaten the whole building's worth of cheesecake.
You would have had a full meal, an appetizer, and the cheesecake. And then that would have just been one of your meals.
That would have been just the third meal of the day. That wouldn't have even been I wouldn't have been done.
Right. Yeah, I think that it actually kind of brings up a lot of points and kind of ties to our conversation. Today's conversation is around my Griswold family European vacation that we just took.
So the always sunny version of this is Neal goes to Europe.
So there's not been a vacation that I haven't gone off the rails. And every time I come home and I get back onto eating properly, it's ridiculous how better I feel. Right. And you just
almost right away.
Yeah. It's really interesting because when you do it a long time, when you eat like that for a while, it almost becomes normal. But then when you switch back, it's so dramatic how you're like, wow, I just felt like crap and I didn't even realize that I felt like crap. And then it just you're getting that very dramatic, super high peak to super duper low. So it hits you hard, but geez.
And we don't realize, and it's something that's underdiagnosed and under talked about, is the impact that bad diet, that poor nutrition has on my mental health.
For sure.
And people will be like, oh, well, they say sugar, you crash and stuff. It's beyond that. It's not just that I crash.
Yeah.
My mind changes. Yeah. It's a totally different mindset. And it's a little scary, if I'm being honest, because if I stay in that, because it feeds itself, right? So now I feel bad, right?
Yeah.
So what am I going to do? I'm going to reach for a simple carb that's going to get the job done. And so that thinking is prevailing in our culture, in our lives, and it's so easy to get our hands on.
And so great parallels here because, I'm coming from a European vacation where people are definitely not nearly as overweight. So I went from this European vacation and then I went to the track in Saratoga, the horse track, and I'm looking around and there wasn't a person with the ideal body weight to be seen.
I believe
right?
It. Yeah.
And
because I wasn't there.
Right, exactly. Meanwhile, in Europe, it was very hard to find somebody in that overweight bracket. Even the dads, because I made lots of friends, conversations with the dad bots, it's just a little pooch. It's nothing like morbid obesity that we deal with because we have such access to high concentrate, horrible, gross food, right?
Yep.
And we just constantly eat it because of our busy lives and what we prioritize, and everything works. And it's just really, really crazy that kind of perception of us being obese. And I have a graphic that we use in our consults talking about, the obesity rates and how they've changed over the past 30 years since this stuff has been subsidized and almost like pushed upon us with the food pyramid as it was presented when we were in school, where carbs are the foundation to your nutrition. And it's just wild to see the percentage of obesity here in our country and then elsewhere, right? And I have to say, it's really weird too, because while I was before this, after I got my hair did, and I've been working out and stuff like that, and again, dragging myself through it all. And I say to myself, like, I just don't know what the tipping point always is, because there always is that tipping point where it's like, I can drink a little bit, I'm going to have some junk food. And then I'm now like eating bags of M&Ms to deal with my stress because of my mental health. And now I'm 15 pounds overweight, 20 pounds, 30 pounds overweight. Now I have to go back on the rails, right? And so I was like, I don't really see that. So then going to Europe, we're doing this great thing. And then it hit me. I'm like, oh my God, I just had a really full breakfast. I had a snack, I had a lunch, and now I'm like hovering over the healthier crackers and cookies that they have there, but I'm just pounding them. And I'm like, oh my God, this is the moment where I just let it slip a little bit. And now I've kind of moved into this is my life now, eating 1 billion calories, even though the food is quote unquote healthier here, And
that's the trap. And that's what we're trying to talk about is the mental game there is, well, I'm already here. And believe me, I have done that every time. Every time it's, well,
in for a penny.
Well,
that's what I kept saying.
Well, I guess I'm just going to have to eat till I vomit. What? How did we get from I had an M&M to I'm going to eat till I puke? But that's how the thinking happens. It's so pervasive, and it's so subtle. It's not something where you're like super aware of it, but it's like it's subtle enough where you're like, well, I guess it's just my life now. And legit, that's what you'll say in your brain. Like, well, I guess, nothing can be done. I guess I just got to be a giant fat person. It's like, well, how did we get here? Right.
Yeah.
But it's so easy to go there.
Yeah.
It just reinforces itself. And it's like, well, I'll just be a fat person now. And it's like, is that the only option?
So I want to give you guys an overview of my little National Lampoon style European vacation that we took. It was a big one. It was, because during COVID, I was working my butt off and didn't really get to see much of my family. And we had to cancel a couple of vacations because of COVID surges around the world, or, the need to do boosters or, test in schools. There was a million different distractions. I canceled 3 or 4 vacations. I think I lost thousands of dollars on flights that weren't refunded. And I'm sure I've got credits to some vacation somewhere that I have to kind of dig through my email, but we were able to get this all together, and it was a real gift for us. We did 21 days in Europe. We started out in Paris, did about 6 days there. Then we went to Bruges, and I had to go to Bruges because of the movie In Bruges. Is that something that you've seen, Mark?
I have seen it. Yes.
Isn't it like a masterpiece?
It's an excellent film, and I thought Peter Dinklage was the guy in it, but we've since determined it was not.
It is not Peter Dinklage, no. And I think it's because he doesn't kind of take those roles, because it was a little person but
the guy that's in it is great. He's great.
Yeah, he's in a bunch of stuff too.
He's in a ton of stuff.
Yeah, and so, but anyway, it was a fantastic movie. Makes fun of fat Americans, which is kind of a good point, right? Something that we're going to be talking about a little bit here today. But Bruges is picturesque. It's not a shithole like he says. It's fantastic. After Bruges, which was just like a 3-day total thing, we went to Rome. Rome, we did a day trip down to Pompeii, and then we went to Florence. We did a few days in Florence. We stayed outside of Florence in like a Tuscan village in Pranetta, and then we did a day trip to Venice. So as you can tell by the itinerary, it was very aggressive for sure. A lot of people have told me that they were exhausted just watching me posting pictures about it. And you should check out my Facebook page, Dr. Neal Smoller. I was very open about our trip and kind of gave everybody a rundown of what we were doing, just so you can relive all of that. I don't have to relitigate it here. It was exhausting. It was awesome. We did it to for a couple of reasons. Like, we wanted the kids to be able to see those dramatic things. I'm trying to keep the attention of 12-year-olds, right? I have 12-year-old triplets, and I have a 9-year-old extra kid, as I call Aria, who's the better kid, right? And we tell her all the time she's our favorite. So we were trying to keep their attention. So we wanted to see, okay, here's the Eiffel Tower, here's the Louvre, all of that stuff, right? So we got to see everything like twice over practically. Our Airbnb was directly outside the Coliseum. So we would open the window and the Coliseum. It was fantastic.
And you were there when Russell Crowe was there with his kids, right? You guys were there?
Yeah, we were in
Same
Rome.
time, yeah.
And I check Twitter, and he's got that, I was showing the kids the old Office kind of a thing.
That's hilarious.
And we had just shown the kids Gladiator. They, our kids are now old enough to start to watch movies instead of like film instead of movies. So we showed them, this won 1 million awards and like how revolutionary it was at the time. And one of the things I didn't really understand is that the Coliseum was kind of like a homeless shelter up until about 2000, right when they started to do the movie.
Oh.
And then they started to really kind of turn it into the touristy thing that it is right now.
I didn't know that.
I didn't know it either. And like, it's funny
cool
because
that it was being used in that way. That's neat.
Yeah, it was great. And like, and so our tour guide was kind of saying that. She's like, I grew up here, and I thought of the Coliseum as like a homeless shelter. It's like where you would find pigeons and like people. So yeah, not as the thing that it is now.
Right.
So yeah, it was really funny that we showed them the Gladiator thing, and then I showed the kids the tweet, and they got a big kick out of that. And so there was a couple really cool things that happened, with the whole thing. First and foremost, like my itinerary, while it was cool to see all that stuff, it was really kind of like a shock to the system. And so my honeymoon, we went to Hawaii for 10 days. And then on the way home, we're like, well, let's stop in Vegas because we got to kind of get acclimated to the time change. And that was the worst idea ever. That was like, like going from Hawaii where you're doing nothing and it's just like the sun and the beach to Las Vegas was such a radical change. It was 10 times worse this time. We're in Paris, then we go to Bruges, and then we go to Rome. And it's like drinking wine and then smoking a little doobie and then taking meth, right? You're just like, wow. It's such a dramatic.
That's a big jump. That's a big leap there, yeah.
Rome is like this tourist trap. There's a billion people. And, one of the things I was telling the kids was about just how to navigate the streets of these countries. And so, Paris is very orderly. There, you can only cross the street when the thing says you can cross the street. Otherwise, you're going to get clocked by the most dangerous thing in Europe, which is a woman on a bicycle. They will just plow you over, and then they will yell at you because you're in their way.
Fair.
And then you go to Bruges, and there's pretty much no cars there. It's just like a walkable. It feels like Disneyland, like Epcot Center, right? And then you go to Rome, where there is no order. You have to take this crazy like leap of faith in front of moving cars that will wait for you. But then the minute that you pick up your back heel, they're just gonna like just go nuts and drive. Nice. So like that energy change from like this picturesque slow place to Rome was quite.
Would you have done it in reverse, knowing what you know now?
I probably and I probably would have cut Rome down. Rome's going through some stuff, man. Like graffiti everywhere and the garbage. There's wild boars being found in Rome because they don't have a real, like, I guess landfill is becoming an issue there. And then the COVID pandemic has been affecting their ability to hire garbage workers. So there's kind of garbage everywhere. So then there's rodents everywhere. So then there's boars eating the rodents. And so it's
what eats the boars? That's when the boars come in.
That's when the boars come in.
I like her idea.
Yeah. So it was a dramatic kind of shift that, that was kind of one of the downsides. I've traveled a bunch and I've never really had problems besides the normal delays that happen, right? This trip, we lost bags twice. Nice. And it makes me want to choke somebody. I will never check a bag again. And the thing about that, like adding stress to your vacation, like they're just like, you're on your own. We screwed up entirely. But you are on your own, like
to figure it out.
To figure it out, to get your bag,
or just to cry it out. It's your problem. That's a you problem.
I'm in Rome for 6 days. They don't call and tell me that they found my bag, and I'm like, "Hey, did you find my bag?" "Oh yeah, we found it days ago." Okay, well, I'm not in Rome tomorrow. So how am I going to get this bag? And they're like, you're from the States? I said, yes. In an email, that's all they said. He said, yes, we're from New York. They put it on a plane to JFK without asking me or anything. And we didn't fly through JFK.
That's awesome.
It's
close enough. It's America. Like America is like you live in America. You can stop by JFK on your way to America, right?
Right.
Luckily, we live in New York, so it's not that crazy. I mean, if you lived in like Michigan or something, you had to stop by JFK.
Right. And so then JFK gets my bag, and then they're like, yeah, we don't service this airline. You're stuck, dude. And like I had to pay FedEx to ship the bag to my house. And then that was, it's just like this whole like stupid nightmare. And on the way home, we lost the bag. This one was crazy. I get an email like 10 days after we're home. And it's like, hey, we found your bag. And then in the signature, it's like, blah, 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 airport, Cabo Verde. And I'm like, what's a Cabo Verde? Oh. So I put that into my little
Cape Green
GPS thing. Yeah, Cape Green. It's outside of Guinea. It's like 200 miles in the ocean off the African coast. It's almost like Morocco.
Wow.
And so I drew a map and put on my social media, like I was here, like up in Europe. I live here over in New York, and like dead in the middle of the ocean down by Africa is my stupid bag. Mm-hmm. And so they finally get that back to us. And we had a wine bottle in there still intact.
I mean, that's amazing. That part. The fact that no one stole your wine, that's incredible.
Especially because she's like, I have to check what's in your bag, And so I'm like, I got a bottle of fine Chianti, and like, so she, they were like, yeah, here it is. It's still intact. You got that. So yeah, I mean, the trip overall is great. And how I'm going to tie this back to our conversation is because, my vacations are often food centric. We are very much eaters, and there's a lot of stuff to unpack about the nutrition and like the physical fitness of people, and whether or not they actually use supplements is a big thing too. I was kind of asking around what people and kind of keeping my eyes open. From a supplement standpoint, it's pretty much non-existent. There was a few pharmacies that specialized in like having supplements. In Italy, it's more so than other places. They rely on herbs. They have a few big national brands, we'll say, quote unquote, and some of them have made their way to America. And that's a big part of a number of pharmacies in Italy. But really in the other spots, it's a small selection. Most pharmacies are just really skincare and like cold management kind of stores, right?
So that's fascinating. Just for a second.
Yeah, sure.
So their supplements are more almost like external. Like, so it's less about sort of changing my insides with all, like, because we're talking a lot about macro and micro and all these nutrients that we think are so important that we got to get 1 million of them in our bodies. That's not the take there. It doesn't sound like they get what they need from the food they eat.
Yeah, and they're very much well aware of that. The supplement industry doesn't have its talons into the countries like it does here.
But it can't if their needs are met, right? So like if they go to the doctor's like, wow, your blood work looks good because you're eating well.
Right.
What supplement can I sell you, right? Like think it through, right? Like that's got to be a piece of this, no?
Well, yeah, I think it's just that knowledge that, our food is higher quality. If we took I've heard a couple of people said, if I took a multivitamin, I'd get sick because I'm already eating really well.
It's a really good point, though. That was what we were talking about earlier. I mean, that's from the Scenes for Apothecary. That's
100%. Like, I think it's very important that people, kind of put it all in context. And, it is really interesting because I said, well, what about supplements? Well, I was going through this diet and I was on all these muscle building mega things, and I just stopped it because I didn't really want to do that anymore. So there was a lot of that, like very sporadic supplement use versus what we do is just make it a part. We're taking a cereal bowl full of pills that are supplements because we heard about it on a radio show or something like that, right? Yeah. And so it's two different kind of perceptions around supplements, which was really great. I think the big thing is the quality of the food. The thing that I've heard the most from people when I tell them about the trip is that they don't need supplements, and they're more in shape because they have higher quality food. And I agree with that, but I don't think I agree with it in the way that most people are kind of coming at it from. They think like our food is lower quality because of like industrial influence, and I think it's really more of a cultural reason that our food is different. Their cities are kind of still dense, whether it's a small town or it's a big city. They kind of have this density where they're all living together, and so there's a cooperation or sharing of resources. Like there's the freaking bread guy, there's the cheese guy, there's the meat guy, right? And so everybody has their specialty where they're searching for the best tasting and best quality thing, and that's how they compete with each other, is to have better and better selection. But then there's this coming together. There's very much almost like a farmer's market feel everywhere. Every city, every town has a central market that's either going every day or every one day of the week, right? Every Wednesday or every Sunday, everybody kind of comes together. So when we're in Bruges and we're eating these pancakes that are the kids are eating these pancakes that are just beautiful, out of an Instagram picture with all these really crazy looking fruits, we're like, oh man, how the heck did they pull that off, right? We go outside and the market's going on and it's all there. And they literally went there that morning, bought all the stuff for the day, for the week, whatever, and then brought it back, and then that's what we were eating.
And that's an important distinction because we're a supermarket society. We're a GNC supermarket, buy it all, get it all, stock it up, BJ's, Costco, get a million powder puffs and eat them. That's how we kind of roll. And so that wasn't what we used to do, right? If you watch Mrs. Maisel, she goes around town and she's got a tab with the meat guy, she's got a tab with the milk guy, she's got a tab with the egg guy, right? It's all part of that idea that I'm getting fresh foods in the time in which they're still ripe and ready, and they have the most nutritional value. When we have a supermarket mentality, things are preserved, they're held for longer. The quality of the nutrition is going to be lower, just based on the fact that we're not just the mass producing piece of it, but that it's not as fresh as it would be if you got it off a cart. Right,
because our priority is towards cost and convenience instead of quality. And
capitalism, baby.
It's disgusting, and it can't be understated that most of our diet, a large number of our calories, comes from hyper processed foods. And while all foods need to be processed, prosciutto is processed. You know what I'm saying? All foods need to be processed, but it's the idea of these Franken foods where they're just pumped full of sugars and artificial fats and such to make them last longer, as if we're going to be in a bunker for 10 days.
But that's how we treat our nutrition, right? And so this is an important point. You're in a country where people seem healthier and they have access to food that's fresh that day, just made. There has to be a parallel there.
100%. And there's other advantages to it as well. They, because there's a love affair with the quality of their food. They get very particular about it. They have regional specialties. Now everything's really mixed, but we're known for this in this area because we have access to these kinds of tomatoes and this kind of basil, and and so then that becomes the thing that we're known for. So now they can kind of get it around, but you go to one area, Rome is known for 3 specific types of pasta because of what was available to
the kind of wheat that they have.
That's exactly right. And so that's really awesome. And then there's this whole competition around food. Paris, a lot of people don't get this, but they have contests every year for who makes the best baguettes, who makes the best croissants, who has the best cheese. It's unreal. So then you find this spot that won it in 2017, and they're still making
I'm imagining they're still very good.
Oh my God.
If they won in 2017, they're probably still very good.
Right. And that's you win this competition, you're guaranteed to be one of the busiest places in Paris for a decade, right? Yeah. And so it was really funny because, we get there, overnight flight, first stop of vacation. We're exhausted, but I'm we're going to go to the Eiffel Tower. Let's walk it. Let's see this place. Let's kind of get the introduction.
These poor kids.
I know. I sit them down at a cafe, and I'm this is what they do, because the cafes all face out. They're very much people watchers, right? So we're just sitting there, and the kids are going out of their minds because they're not used to just sitting and looking at something that isn't an iPad screen,
that isn't
right?
a machine, right?
And so we do that, and then we start walking towards the Eiffel Tower, and I see a baguette store. So I hop in, and it's not even an award winner.
A baguette store.
Because
that's the old baguette store.
That's what it is, man. It's crazy.
The old baguette store.
I just do long pieces of bread.
That's it. Listen, hey, I'm here for it.
So I hop in, and my kid's what are you doing? I grabbed it and I just start breaking.
At the baguette store, kids.
I just break it off and I just start feeding them like they're little birds behind me. And my kids stopped in their tracks and audibly gasped. They're wow.
What is this food that I'm eating?
Can you imagine
this is bread?
A piece of bread that tastes
changes
your
life.
Changes your life. The crispiness, the softness, the flavors. flavor, the texture. It's unreal. And this wasn't even one of the winners. And then when we got introduced to that, forget about it, right? So it was out of control. And
it's weird though, right? Like take a step back from that.
Sure.
What we eat doesn't taste the same. I have this conversation with people about Dunkin' Donuts coffee, and listen, I'm a Dunkin' Donuts fan, so I'm coming from a place of love. But my buddy and I, we talk about how Dunkin' Donuts coffee is the exact same no matter where you get it, but it tastes like no other coffee you've ever had, right? And so,
that's right.
And so why is it that this particular, like every coffee, like you brew a cup of coffee anywhere on earth in a crappy motel, and it tastes one kind of way, but you put Dunkin' in, and it's a completely different thing. So why is that, right? And so this bread that we're eating, this Frankenbread, this Frankenstein food that we're talking about, this Frankenbread, it doesn't taste at all the same as the food that you're eating in Paris. And so there has to be something to the quality of what the ingredients are.
I think we need to take a note, because that actually brings up a really good point about processed foods, Dunkin'. And I have this conversation about juices a lot, about how because of our mentality, we want to be able to walk into a restaurant on the East Coast or the West Coast and get the same exact experience. So consistency matters most. So then clearly it's not real, because if it was real, there would be variations in how it tastes day to day.
Divergent, right?
Not necessarily just like coast to coast, right? So juices.
I can get a Subway sandwich here or in California that's exactly the same sandwich.
Amount of slime.
That's frightening though, right? Like that's a scary thing.
Right. Sunny D in this, or even just any orange juice, Tropicana orange juice is going to taste the same because of what they do to the things. And again, it's a whole other conversation.
Totally.
And so that's the opposite of what we're expecting when we're in Europe. We're actually expecting the opposite. It's going to be very, very localized how the food is. There's not going to be a consistent. The carbonara in 10 different restaurants that we went to tasted differently in each one, because they're doing different things, using different variations of the cooking style and different ingredients, even if it was owned by the same folks. And so that was really like the idea of like this fresh, more local, this central market. It really speaks to me. And I think like if you have access to a CSA or access to a farmer's market, you should be taking more advantage of it, because it's going to give you much healthier results. One of the other things that comes up a bunch in conversations about European vacations is how everybody's in shape. And I will say that Paris, I think it's the city of love, because everybody's super fit, they dress really nice, and they're just ready. They're ready for love. It is an attractive place to be.
Good-looking people.
Good-looking people.
Okay. Kind of like the studio.
Right.
All right.
So I would say that, yes, in general, Europeans are in shape. And I would say that the closest thing to out of shape that I saw was like an American dad bod. I think like I look like an out of shape European. And so like I'm decent, right? But like there's like higher body fat percentage than I'd want to be. Mm-hmm. But most of the time people were very like skinny, fit.
Well, and you said earlier that the most dangerous thing in Paris is a woman on a bike, right? So she goes to her market on her bike with her basket, and she puts in fresh foods and she rides her bike. Yeah. Neal, it's a straight line, right? Yeah. I mean, what if she drinks water? We got everything.
We got it all. Yeah. And it's really wild to watch the morning commute, as most people are on bikes. So there's women in business suits or in beautiful dresses riding their bike to work. That would be like, it would be unheard of here, just because of the potential like dirtess that you can, right?
Gross it is, right?
And so, yes, there's a higher level of physical fitness. When you live in a city, you're going to be walking more. And the bicycling thing was really fantastic. When we went to Bruges, we had to go through Brussels. And so at the Brussels train station, there was, how our massive, stupid parking lots just filled with cars. So like, just picture like a larger parking lot, not like an airport parking lot, but a larger parking lot, like packed with bikes. I was estimating 20,000 bikes in this one spot. And so like, everybody from the area is biking in to take their train to go to these other places. So that level, and like the bike shops. So like we have vitamin stores or coffee stores here, like chain restaurants, they have bike stores to that frequency. And
because you have to,
right? Because it's a very efficient way to travel.
Infrastructure.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
And so, I would say that Paris was where I saw the most fit people. And then as we traveled through, the people became less and less fit. But it's not a criticism. That's just kind of a reality because,
there's probably very healthy people in Bruges. These are generalizations, folks.
I met a gentleman who was speaking, it sounded a little Dutch, but it was actually the French. So in Belgium, the north part speaks Dutch, the south part speaks French, right? But this dude's jacked, like muscles galore. And I'm like, oh, so you're from France, And he's like, no, I'm from Belgium, the southern part, that whole thing. And I'm like, how the heck do you get so ripped living in the city of fries?
Right.
And you can't call them French fries. I got yelled at because Belgium actually invented fries, not the French.
Oh.
And they do this like double frying in ox fat thing. And then they put their Flemish beef on top of it with like a meat sauce.
Sign me up.
Forget about it. Yeah. So it was really amazing. Like we had some of the best food ever in these places. And so again, yeah. So as you go to a place like Bruges, it's a more touristy vibe. The people that are out of shape might have a dad bod like me, but they're in general they're really good considering the fried food, the beer, all of that other stuff. And again, not to like beat up people that are overweight because that's certainly not the objective. It's just our perspective of what is normal is skewed because we're so used to seeing people that are obese. And that's the truth. It's like they're not just overweight. Overweight is what I saw in Europe. Obese is what's happening here. There is a horrible graphic. It's horrible because it's a great graphic, but it's horrible because of like the reality. Over the past 40 years, the percentage of people in every state that are obese, not overweight, has gone up dramatically. And it really, really stinks to kind of like bear witness to it and understanding how that impacts all of the other things, all of the diseases that we're suffering from. We're here today still dealing with COVID, trying to do all the preventative stuff to get rid of COVID. And just like with all of those other illnesses, people are fatigued and the risk calculation that they're doing in their head says that I don't have to really care about that. And that's what we do with our nutrition and those long-term illnesses, cancer, heart disease, Alzheimer's, dementia, all of those things are like future risks. And, the short-term satisfaction and the short-term like happiness and lack of, resources to devote to what you need to do to be healthier. All of those calculations kind of come together. And it's really sad, because we could be living these healthier lives. These people are smoking like structure fires and they're still living until they're 80 years old, right? And they're physically fit. And so there's a lot of really interesting kind of things that are going on in Europe that I wish were going on here.
And everything is compounded by the unhealthy choices. And so when we don't have access to that level of food, then we're not going to make the kind of choices that, like, we don't have the ability in a city in the Northeast to have access the way you're describing. There's weather issues. Just the biking alone is a great example, right? I'm not going to ride a bike in the middle of a snowstorm. And so there's pieces of this that affect the quality of life. At the end of the day, though, the reason we're here, you and I, doing any of this is to help this process. So demystify all of the nonsense around it and get to brass tacks around. So we're looking at these European folks as to what works. Right. And then we're trying to take some of that and we're bringing that exact idea back here to you here in America or wherever you're listening to this. You could be listening in another country. That's how podcasts work.
Maybe.
But we want to support the idea that you can do this. And that's the piece that we keep coming back to. This is accessible. All of this.
Right.
We keep using that word. But it is available to all of you and you can do this. And so this is not an impossible thing. This is not something where you have to say, oh, well, I'm surrounded by beer and waffles, so I can't get healthy. That guy in Bruges managed to get healthy, right? And so how do we help you, meet your needs in this way so that you're living a life that's a little bit closer to what that European idea is? And we're not trying to Europeanize you this is not a communist thing. It's not a political thing. We're just trying to get you to a healthier place. And we're looking at people who do it right? Because if I'm looking at somebody who's not very good at this, like if I'm looking at the guy who's like at Walmart, riding around in his cart, throwing Doritos at the problem.
Yeah.
Am I, and nothing against a Doritos guy. That's what he does. That might be what he thinks is nutrition. That's how bad it is here, right? And so we have to get clear about when we talk about taking that inventory, looking at what you're actually eating, looking at what you're putting in your body. If you're not doing those things, we can't have an honest conversation about supplements, about any of the other pieces, because you can't move to that next level, like you said.
Right. And I think the one thing that we can do to help people today is talking about the post-vacation cleanse that I have to go through. So you and I both feel the same way when we eat like this, because even though it's healthier food, there's still junk food, dessert. Like I can notice myself going off the rails totally. I'm now just like higher quality simple sugar, but I'm eating lots of it, right?
And you can rationalize it because you're like, oh, I'm in France.
I walked 9 miles.
I walked
today.
700,000 miles.
Yeah,
right?
Meanwhile, like I'm eating twice the amount of calories.
7,000 calories.
Yeah.
Right?
So the idea of a cleanse, and we'll talk about cleanses in depth later. But the idea of a cleanse is that we have to psychologically reset ourselves. That's why I'm for cleanses. I'm not for the gimmicks around cleanses, but it really takes 2 to 3 days of like shaking and crying.
Oh yeah,
to get
it's
through.
like withdrawal, and we're joking about it because it's food, so it's funny. But in reality, truly, and we've talked about this before, the way we feel when we ingest these simple sugars and what it does to our chemistry, to our brain, to all of the, like the fog and all of the pieces, like when you were talking about the woman thinking she has Alzheimer's, like I get that fog from eating too much donuts, right?
Yeah.
Like that's a thing that happens. And so we got to talk about that the nutrition component is so important.
Right. So when you are coming back from vacation, though, I have to get back on the rails here a little bit. And so I'm instantly going for my small frequent meals, having the salads, having the less simple sugar almost entirely, abstaining from alcohol after drinking bottles of wine every day, and trying to maintain the physical fitness. And it is a challenge to kind of get back on, but I always feel like you need it. Yeah.
It's easier if you've established a pattern of habits. So if you have these habits before you went on vacation, when you come back, they'll still be waiting for you. If you haven't established these, you're going to stay on that train. You're going to stay derailed, like you said, off the rails. You're going to stay off the rails for a longer period of time because you don't have that base to come back to. And so we're trying to build a strong base here. We're trying to build habits. We're trying to build discipline, a schedule that's accessible and available to you that you can use, that's not going to be something that's confusing or hard to get back to if you walk away from. That's the other piece of this. When you feel success, you're going to come back to it. And so Neal's felt success with the plan that he has. So he's going back to it after having a completely lunatic 3 weeks. That's the idea, is that he has the information and the experience to go back to. If you don't have that information and experience, you don't know where to start. And we're here for information and experience.
Excellent. I think that's enough for Off the Record. We kind of dove into a lot of
crazy.
Introduce some interesting concepts.
We didn't talk about your kids swimming in the canal.
The canal.
That was neat.
And without getting an infection,
without no diseases from that. Talk about public health.
We didn't talk about they're like, can we swim in Venice? I'm like, that's where the poop
where
goes.
the dead is. Do you want to die? That's gross.
My daughter did pass out at the sight of David's penis,
which we've all done.
And it wasn't the statue David. It was
just some dude Dave on the street.
No, so that's enough for us. Thanks for joining us and Off the Record. We appreciate the support.
Thank you,
and
guys.
we will talk to you again next week.